What's going on, world? It's your boy at Big Game James _36, and I'm with Greg McGarity. And this is the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl Drive to Selection, presented by Toyota, where each and every week we give you a breakdown of what happened with college football the previous weekend, what's coming up this weekend, and how it affects the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, played here December 29th at noon in Jacksonville, Florida. Finally. Unfortunately, but finally, because it means the season is coming to an end. It feels like it just started, but it also feels like it's been a really long time for the college football season. And we kind of go into a big weekend, Thanksgiving. Everybody gets a chance to eat their food, be around their family, but a lot of major rivalry games are being played this weekend, which still should be able to affect the landscape of college football.
Especially with the ACC, SEC matchups there. If you see it up and down the board, as well as some conference matchups that certainly will have huge implications on the bowl scene. So we'll talk about a few of those, but as you say, starting Thursday night with the Egg Bowl, a lot of football to be played.
A lot of tradition, a lot of parity. Really, with those games like the Egg Bowl, FSU, Florida, a bunch of other different things outside of the ACC and the SEC, Ohio State, Michigan, major implications for what the national landscape is going to be. You never can just discount these games. The other team can be defeated, the other team can be undefeated, and you never know what's going to happen. You've been around a couple of those big ones. What is this weekend like as an athletic director? Getting your guys prepared, having guys maybe try to sneak home real quick for Thanksgiving and to come back. What are some of the things that you had to be aware of and had to take into consideration as an athletic director?
Well, it is an unusual week because, as you mentioned, the coaches want their young kids to be able to spend time with their family. That means they may end up in practice a little bit early. It may be that they have to sacrifice and not be with their families. But really, your in-state rivalries really are, I've always viewed them as the most important. And every team has different rivalries, but just like Florida and Florida State, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Kentucky, you see so many of those games that really matter. And so that's when the unpredictable happens. So I think there's a lot of chaos that will happen this weekend and certainly the following weekend, which is maybe upset the apple cart in the college football playoff standings. But that's what makes college football so great, is that unpredictability.
It's the best time. It happens when families get together. Anyway, Thanksgiving, all the family secrets come out. Everybody's doing right over the dumplings and over the gravy. You just brought up a couple major ones because, the elephant in the room affecting not necessarily our bowl game, but definitely affecting the national landscape. FSU lost Jordan Travis,
right,
which has a lot of people wondering what is the next 2 weeks going to look like for Florida State. But also you have Louisville sitting right here in this seat playing an important game against Kentucky. What happens to the ACC side of things if Louisville beats Kentucky and goes into the ACC championship? If FSU beats Florida, goes into the ACC championship undefeated, to the ACC's ability to have a college football playoff person that's in the game.
Yep.
Couldn't think of the words. Conversely, what happens if Louisville loses to Kentucky and FSU beats Florida,
right,
but loses to Louisville? Does that have any effect of the Gator Bowl? Does that have any effect of the college football landscape?
Yeah, I think the key thing you need to watch for is the top 12 teams in the college football playoff rankings, because very few teams outside the top 12 had qualified for the college football playoff. You got to remember the group of 5 has to have a representative in the New Year's Day game. So even though right now it's Tulane, but you've got to have a team there that qualifies as well for the group of 5. So it all is going to depend on the rankings. If an ACC team is not in the top 4, then someone will represent the ACC in the Orange Bowl. Now, wherever the Florida State, if those dynamics work out, will they still be in the top 12? That will be determined, not until the Sunday after the championship games are determined. But really keep an eye on the college football playoff rankings this week, and maybe where Ole Miss stands in relationship to Penn State, because right now Ole Miss is kind of the first team out, but could work their way up if there's chaos above them.
That's a good point. So even so, if Florida, let's say things don't work out for Florida State, they win one of the next two. Just the way things are shaping up, they more than likely will end up in some kind of New Year's Six bowl if they're staying in the top 12.
I mean,
With one loss, they probably shouldn't get out of the top 12.
Correct.
So
they'd be in the Orange Bowl at that point in time. If they weren't in the top 4, they'd be the highest ranked ACC team more than likely, unless Louisville jumps them. So, but I don't think Florida State would not be a New Year's Day Bowl 6 game with one loss.
if Louisville wins the ACC championship, is there a way, and go undefeated, the last 2 games, so with one loss, does that still give ACC a possible outdoor chance to have a team in the New Year's Six?
It just depends on what those people in the room think. You know, the eye test, analytics, things of that nature. But that's what it's going to come down to is the 5th and the 6th ranked team are going to be upset because they aren't in the top 4. But, you know, Washington got to play Oregon in the championship. So you've got so many things that could work themselves out. But
they've got Washington State this week that's fighting to be bowl eligible.
Absolutely.
Put up some points last Friday against Colorado. Yeah. They can score. Nobody plays defense in the Pac-12, but again, a lot of interesting matchups over the next couple weeks. This past weekend, we'll go with the ACC first. What were some of the matchups that you felt were pretty good, and kind of how does that affect where we're at right now?
Well, I think the key game was Clemson beating North Carolina because that drew the group together. Now you've got 3 teams with 8 wins, and you've got 1 team with 7, Clemson, and then you've got 4 teams with 6 wins. And then you've got Syracuse, Virginia Tech that could become bowl eligible. So it drew that pack together and prevented North Carolina from maybe separating themselves. It was a big game for Clemson. Of course, they have their work cut out for them this weekend at South Carolina, who's pretty hot right now.
In South Carolina, they're still fighting again. Another game where somebody's fighting to just be bowl eligible, which is funny. As much as people pick on, oh, there's too many bowl games, there's a lot of people fighting just to be able to continue to play, to get those extra couple days of practice. Georgia Tech, kind of going over to the SEC, Georgia Tech is in a situation where they're not playing for bowl eligibility anymore.
Right.
They're playing for a better bowl, going up against Georgia. Any chance, or is it more so a snowball's chance?
No, I think there's always a chance. It'll be interesting to see how Tech responds. I know they really had a huge celebration after becoming bowl eligible last week. So do they feel like they've accomplished their goals and going to a bowl, or everything at stake having to qualify for a bowl? But I think you'll see, I mean, they have nothing to lose. So I think anytime a team comes in there with nothing to lose, if Georgia, for instance, doesn't play a clean game, I think it's a close game, even though the spread may be 20 points or more. But we've all seen, I mean, Auburn was a 27-point pick over New Mexico State last week. We all know how that game ended up. So I just think the gloves are off in any in-state matchup when you've got rivalries involved.
And especially with Georgia maybe peaking a little bit to that big-time matchup in Atlanta again with Bama. Another bowl-eligible might need to call these bowl-eligible bowls.
Right.
Florida State playing Florida. Obviously, we just talked about Jordan Travis being injured, but an interesting thing that's shaking up University of Florida with Graham Mertz going down, who's actually been playing way above what people thought he was going to be able to play. Florida just can't stop anybody on defense. They are literally a offensive coordinator stimulus package. They give up a lot of points. Where would Florida be in the bowl selection process if they are to upset Florida State?
Well, they'd be at the bottom of the pack because you've got some teams that already have 6 wins that could have 7 wins. So they probably won't be choosy, but you know, who knows? If Ole Miss moves up, they could be in play for our game with a win. You just don't know how those dynamics are going to work out. But I think that game is really going to be interesting. I would love to maybe understand, be behind the curtains to see how the coaches' game plan has changed for both schools. Because, you know, they prep all year for the games assuming that these players are going to play. So what changes are going to be made? How does the culture help determine who's going to win the game? Or are the kids going to feel sorry for themselves? Are they going to be amped up to be able to make up for their teammates that are hurt? I mean, you you'll have both those teams that really want to play hard for the quarterbacks that won't be in the game. So I think it'll be a dynamic game just to see how things have changed since you've got those two quarterbacks that are out of play, and their replacements are totally different.
Way different. Different doesn't even. Jordan Travis being an extreme athlete, very good, very gifted. Going back to a Tay Rodemaker, who's more of a pocket presence, to a Graham Mertz, who is more of a point guard with the ball, distributing the ball to a bunch of different people, to a young man who seems to be really, really athletic and wants to run the ball and be explosive. I have no idea how they're going to game, how either side is going to game plan, but it should make for fun for Thanksgiving. And then with things still on the table to be able to play for, makes that even more exciting. Any other games that we should be interested in on the ACC side or the SEC side this week?
Well, I think you've got Boston College playing Miami. The winner of that game will be bowl eligible, which potentially could be in our pool for our games, depending on what happens to other teams.
I looked at that weather.
And North Carolina at North Carolina State. The winner of that game will have 9 wins and probably will be at the top of the heap of the premium pool. So that'll be 2 games that we'll really be taking a close look at this week.
Miami going into Boston with a slight chance of snow. We know it will be cold. I go and look at it. That's where my family's from, that area. Don't envy them for that. At noon, again, a lot of weird things happen, but Miami's still having a lot to play for. They also lost their quarterback, Emory Williams, last week, and the guy, Tyler Van Dyke, nursing a leg injury. They're going into a weird place to play. They have about as many. Actually, both will be used to the fan attendance. Nobody really goes to those games. Cold, not Florida, but. Again, we have the notables, which is a lot of things that can't happen. But bigger than that, let's look at the projections because a lot of stuff can't happen. But let's look at what the people are projecting and then base it on that. And then there were some interesting things that you told me about the SEC side that definitely affects all bowl games that I think people should know about. So we got to see. There's a lot of people actually. I don't know if they're cheating off each other's tests. They're reading the same piece of paper, but a lot of people think North Carolina and Tennessee.
Yeah, I think they're assuming that Ole Miss is going to be in the Citrus Bowl, which would then create some dynamics there that would come into play. But yeah, if the season ended today, all the prognosticators that we follow have Tennessee coming to our game. Who knows what will happen? On the other side, they've got North Carolina penciled in, and NC State's the other team that's penciled in. We know Notre Dame can't play here. We know that North Carolina can't go to San Diego. They were there last year. Clemson going to Orlando probably can't happen. They were there in 2021. NC State was in San Diego in 2021. So it may be a process of elimination about who feeds into our bowl. And then it depends on the matchup because there's certain things that probably, they could happen, but they probably won't happen as far as NC State playing Tennessee because they play in week 2 of 2024. I don't know if both those teams would want to play each other 2 times in over 3 game span there. But a lot of things can come into play, but that's what makes it so unique. You can't just make some assumptions without knowing all the disclaimers that come into play as far as repeat venues, things like that.
So Tennessee is in the premium pool. They're number 2 in the premium pool right now, which is again why a lot of people are projecting them to us. What could happen in that premium pool that could boost them up to number 1?
Well, LSU more than likely is going to win this weekend. Tennessee, I would think so against Vanderbilt. Mississippi's, predicted ahead to beat Mississippi State, but I think it just depends again on where does Mississippi fall into the college football playoff. Do they or do they not? Again, LSU can't go back to the Citrus Bowl. They were there last year. So Tennessee can't go to the Orange Bowl, but they were in Nashville 2 years ago. Kentucky can't play in Nashville. They were there last year. So you've got some dynamics there that could come into play as far as participating teams.
On the ACC side right now, the premium pool is is a lot bigger than everybody else's, but you've got obviously North Carolina, Notre Dame, North Carolina State, Clemson, Boston College, Duke, Miami still, and Georgia Tech, which is basically everybody who's bowl eligible. And the Gator Bowl gets the second pick out of that premium pool, or which pick do we get from the ACC side?
Well, once the ReliaQuest, we'll get the first pick in Tampa, because more than likely the Big Ten is going to fill a spot in the Orange Bowl. So that means that more than likely Notre Dame is going to find their way to the ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa. And then it's strictly between Jacksonville, Orlando, and San Diego. There's a lot of methodology in play. It would take us forever to determine picks and who has priority, but it really becomes down what's the best matchup. And you've got some indicators there as far as distance to the bowl site, what's the record among the teams you're considering head-to-head, previous matchups, things of that nature. So no one really has a pick, so to speak. It's more or less what's the best matchup.
And back on the SEC side, the last thing, there could be not enough premium teams. Not enough bowl eligible teams.
Yeah. I mean, you've got, if Ole Miss moves up, that would be 4 SEC teams in the New Year's Day bowls, which leaves 5 teams for really 7 spots, unless South Carolina becomes eligible, or Mississippi State becomes eligible, or Florida. So there would be, for the first time in quite some time, not enough teams to fill those bowls that are not New Year's Day bowls. So we'll just have to wait and see, but who knows, at the end of the weekend, they may all be eligible. Who knows? Which is
why you have to watch, which is, again, after you get full, eat your leftovers, watch a lot of good college football coming down toward the end. And make sure you get your tickets for the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl, right. December 29th, noon, here in Jacksonville, Florida. All kinds of fun stuff happening. What we do know is there will be 2 great teams and a great matchup to help not just kick off your new year, but also help have a great bowl season. So I'm at Big Game James _36. This is Greg McGarity, and this is the TaxSlayer Gator Bowl Drive to Selection presented by Toyota. We will see you guys next week.
That's